So now we have our 4 different views controlled by our tab bar controller, but there's no information in them. So in this lesson, we're going to start to build that information. One way we could do it is we could create a new class, one for each of these view controllers. We could create a top album view controller, a top song view controller, and they'd all do the same thing, but they would have different data. But remember, one of our goals is to try to reduce the amount of duplicated code. So we're going to actually do this in a little bit different way, which we'll get to in a second. But first, let's go ahead and we're going to look at our top song view. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And we're going to start to put some information on there. So I'm going to go to my object library, Command Option L, and I'm going to take a label and I'm going to add it to my screen. And I'll go ahead and use my attributes inspector. Let's see, let's make it, let's go ahead and customize this. I'm going to do custom. Helvetica New is fine. Ultralight is fine. Let's boost the size up a little bit. And then let's make the color, let's see, let me close this. Let's make the color our nice blue that we like. Go ahead and make this bigger and get it close. Okay, so we've got our title. Let's go ahead and put in some constraints to make sure it shows up in the right spot. So I'm going to hit the control key down and drag up and do vertical spacing to top layout guide. And then I'm going to add horizontal alignment in. So horizontally in container. Come and use current canvas value and add one constraint. And then I'm going to hit Option Command equals to update my frames. And so I've got my label placed correctly. Let's go ahead and add another label that's going to be for the artist. Okay. Actually, I'm going to change this to title just so we know. Update my frames. Oops, change this label to artist. Again, let's make this, let's make a different color just to be different. And we'll make our font custom. All that's good. And we'll make this 25. Okay. So right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to want to make sure that these are the same distance apart all the time. So I'm going to hit Control and then move to the title and say that the vertical spacing is the same. Okay, so these are always going to be this distance apart, these two labels. And then I'm going to do the horizontally in container, use the current canvas value, add the constraint, and then Command Option equals. And now everything should be laid out correctly. So let me go ahead and add one more thing to my view. I'm going to add a image view. I'm going to go ahead and drag that on, put it about here. And I'm going to, the first thing, I'm in the size inspector, I'm going to change my width to 200 and my height to 200 and go ahead and center that. I'm going to add a vertical constraint, so it's always the same distance from my artist label. So next I'm going to control drag down, and I'm going to center horizontally in container. And then the final thing I'm going to do is add height and width constraints. So I'm going to use my pin control, and I'm going to add width and height, add those two constraints, and notice that everything is now lined up correctly. Okay, well, let's go ahead and run this. And I notice that when I go to my top song, I have a title, an artist, but no image. And the image view is blank because I haven't assigned any image to it. So we need to do that at some point as well. If I click on that, you notice they don't show up because I've only done that on the top song view. So we need to go back, stop this, and take these elements and copy them to each of the different views. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight them all by command clicking on them. So hold the command key down, click on that. I'm going to do command C to copy, and then I'm going to go to my item 2, my top album view controller, and paste them. Oops. I'm going to paste them in here. Move them down a little bit. And notice that the elements came across and some of the constraints came across, like this height and width and the spacing between the labels, but the relative constraints to the view did not come over. So I need to create a constraint to the top view from here, and then I need to do a view center horizontally, and now all my labels and elements are lined up correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the other two views. I'm going to go to the, whoa, I need that back. Okay, let's just use so I got top song done. Let's go to top movie scene. Paste that in. Let's go ahead and control up. I'm going to do vertical spacing here, and I'm going to do center horizontally. That's good. And my last one is my top app scene. Click there, paste it. And I'm going to drag up to get vertical spacing and drag down for center horizontally. Okay, now I have all my views in place. I still have some errors here. Need constraint for the Y position. So you notice that both of these constraints don't have X position, so I need to go ahead and center them in the container. So I'm going to drag up and do center horizontally in container, and I'll do the same for the artist. And notice those errors go away. And let's go back to the top movie scene. I'll need to do that for each of these as well. Click on title, center horizontally, artist. Whoa. Make sure I get the view. Center horizontally. And then my other one with an error is the top app scene. So I'll go here. I'll do center horizontally. And finally, okay, so I should have no more layout issues. So it should be good to go. Let's go ahead and run this to make sure that everything appears where it should be. So I got my top song, top album, top app, top movie. And again, they're in slightly different positions. You see them shift, but we're not going to worry about that for right now, though if we were being precise, we'd want to make sure they were all at the same spot. Okay, so we've got our labels, we've got our images, with nothing showing up. We now need a class to handle all that data. So we're going to create a media controller. So let's go ahead and hit Command N for a new file. We're going to do a source file, and we are going to use a Cocoa Touch class because this is going to be a subclass of UI view controller. All right, and we're going to call it top media controller. And it's a subclass of UI view controller, and obviously we're using Swift. We'll leave it here. And now it shows up as a top media controller. Okay, we've got our view-to-load function with our super view-to-load. The first thing we're going to do is tell all of our views to use this as their view controller. So let's go ahead and open up our storyboard. And we're going to go to the top album scene first. And we're going to go to the identity inspector and see which class. It's not using any class. We're going to put it top media controller. We're going to do the same thing for top song scene, top media controller. For the top movie scene, and for the top app scene. So now all of these different views are using the top media controller as their view controller. Okay, so now we need to start making connections between these different labels and our view controller. So we're going to go to our top media controller, and we're going to manually type in the outlet properties for each of those labels and views. So it's at IB outlet week variable title label of type UI label. And it's going to be an implicitly unwrapped optional. Week, we put in the week definition, and that has to do with memory management. And it's because the parent view, not this controller, owns the label. So if that view goes away, the memory allocated to that view goes away as well. So it's because that view owns the label, not this controller itself. And we put the exclamation point, which is remember, it's an implicitly unwrapped optional. We're saying there is definitely going to be some data there. And the reason we do that is because this view controller is not going to initialize these properties with data when it's created. So we need to implicitly say there's going to be some data there. Let's go ahead and add properties for the other information, IB outlet, week, and it's going to be a artist label. Whoops. Got to spell label, right? And is of type UI label. Unwrap it. And we're going to do at IB outlet week variable image view of type UI image view. And we'll unwrap that as well. And my error goes away. Good. Okay, so I've got definitions for each of these properties. So now I need to create connections between each of those views to these different properties so that this view controller can set text and so on, and set images. So I'm going to use the interface builder and my document outline to actually create connections between these two. Okay, so let's go ahead and create those connections. So I'm going to expand my top album scene, since this is the first one. I'm going to click on the top album view. I'm going to keep expanding until I see my different pieces. So I'm going to take the top album. I'm going to drag a connection. I'll hold the control key down and drag to title. And I'm going to choose title label. Okay? And then I'm going to keep doing that, repeat that for the artist. I'm going to make that artist label. And I'm going to do it one more time, drag that to image view and choose image view. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing for top song. I'm going to click on my top song controller, control drag to title, and choose title label. I'm going to control drag to artist and choose artist label. And I'm going to choose image view for the image view. Okay, let's go ahead and do that for top movie scene. I'm going to control drag to title and choose title label. Artist to artist label. And then finally to image view. And then finally, the top app scene, I'll do the same thing. Control drag to title, title label, control drag to artist, choose artist label, and finally to image view, choose image view, and that should be done. To make sure all our connections are working, we're going to add a line of code to our top media controller. Let's go ahead and select it. And in our view did load, we're going to say title label dot text equals media, capitalize media title. So we're hard coding a value in for that text, for that label. Let's go ahead and run this, and let's see if those labels updated. And again, they all should be the same since there's no different. So now this top song says media title, top album says media title, top app, and top movie. So we know our connections are working because the text was updated on each label. So we have our connections working. We can start to build more code and more functionality into our app.